Jayo Yashoda Nandana Jayo Brajajanandana Jayo Yashoda Nandana Jayo Brajajanandana Jayo Yamuna Tiravana Chari Jayo Kunda Bihari Jayo Yamuna Tiravana Kunda Bihari Jayo Yamuna Tiravana Chari Jayo Kunda Bihari Jayo Jamuna Tiravana Jayo Kunda Bihari Jayo Radha Madhava Jayo Kunda Bihari Jayo Radha Madhava Jayo Kunda Bihari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna अभय चरणार भक्ति वेदांत स्वामी श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय। अनंत कोटि वैष्णव की जय। श्रीमद् भागवत महापुराण की जय। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। 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 ओम भगवते वासुदेवाय। नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरये। नष्टप्रायेषु अभद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भगवते उत्तमश्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्ठिकी। कृष्णाय वासुदेवाय देवकीनन्दनाय च नन्दगोपकुमाराय गोविन्दाय नमो नमः। Hare Krishna. So thank you all the devotees, Prabhuji, Mataji's for joining this morning in this discussion of the beautiful verse from Srimad Bhagavatam. Hare Krishna. Today we'll be discussing from Canto 3, chapter number 9, which is entitled Lord Brahma's Prayers for Creative Energy. Text 5 is a very poetic verse. Let me open the verse. Hare Krishna. Prabhuji, if we can display the verse 395. ये We can start reciting 395. Hare Krishna. Yes. ये तु त्वदीयचरणाम्बुजकोशगन्धम् ये तु त्वदीयचरणाम्बुजकोशगन्धम् जिघ्रन्ति कर्णविवरैः श्रुतिवातनीतम् ग्रन्थि कर्णविवरैः श्रुतिवातनीतम् भक्त्या गृहीतचरण परया च तेषां गृहीतचरण परया च तेषां नापैशिनाथहृदयाम्बुरुहास्त्वपुंसां नापैशिनाथहृदयाम्बुरुहास्त्वपुंसां ये तु त्वदीयचरणाम्बुजकोशगन्धम् त्वदीयचरणाम्बुजकोशगन्धम् जिघ्रन्ति कर्णविवरैः श्रुतिवातनीतम् तिकर्णविवरैः श्रुतिवातनीतम् भक्त्या गृहीतचरण परया च तेषां गृहीतचरण परया च तेषां नापैशिनाथहृदयाम्बुरुहास्त्वपुंसां पैशिनाथहृदयाम्बुरुहास्त्वपुंसां. Prabhuji, anybody would like to recite? ये तु त्वदीयचरणाम्बुजकोशगन्धम् जिघ्रन्ति कर्णविवरैः श्रुतिवातनीतम् भक्त्या गृहीतचरण परया च तेषाम् नापैशिनाथहृदयाम्बुरुहास्त्वपुंसाम् ये तु त्वदीयचरणाम्बुजकोशगन्धम् जिघ्रन्ति कर्णविवरैः श्रुतिवातनीतम् भक्त्या गृहीतचरण परया च तेषाम् नापैशिनाथहृदयाम्बुरुहास्त्वपुंसाम्. माताजी. ये तु त्वदीयचरणाम्बुजकोशगन्धम् जिघ्रन्ति कर्णविवरैः श्रुतिवातनीतम् भक्त्या गृहीतचरण परया च तेषाम् नापैशिनाथहृदयाम्बुरुहास्त्वपुंसाम्. Word to word translation by Srila Prabhupada. Ye, those who, tu, but, tvadiya, your, charanambuja, lotus feet, kosha, inside, gandham, flavor, jigranti, smell, karna vivarai, through the channel of the ears, shruti vatanitam, carried by the air, of Vedic sound, bhaktya by devotional service, grahita charana accepting the lotus feet, paraya transcendental, cha also, tesham for them, na never, apaisi separate, nath O my Lord, Rudaya heart, Ambu Ruhat from the lotus of Swapumsa of your own devotees. Translation: O my Lord, persons who smell the aroma of your lotus feet, carried by the air of Vedic sound, through the holes of the ears, accept your devotional service. For them, you are never separated from the lotus of their hearts. Please try to repeat the translation once. O my Lord, persons who smell the aroma of your lotus feet, carried by the air of Vedic sound through the holes of the ears, accept your devotional service. For them, you are never separated from the lotus of their hearts. Purport: For the pure devotees of the Lord, there is nothing beyond the lotus feet of the Lord, and the Lord knows that such devotees do not wish anything more than that. The word tu specifically establishes this fact. The Lord also does not wish to be separated from the lotus hearts of those pure devotees. That is the transcendental relationship between the pure devotees and the personality of Godhead. Because the Lord does not wish to separate himself from the hearts of such pure devotees, it is understood that they are specifically dearer than the impersonalist. The relationship of the pure devotees with the Lord develops because of devotional service to the Lord on the authentic basis of Vedic authority. Such pure devotees are not mundane sentimentalists, but are factually realist because their activities are supported by the Vedic authorities, who have given oral reception to the facts mentioned in the Vedic literatures. The words paraya is very significant. Para bhakti or spontaneous love of God is the basis of an intimate relationship with the Lord. This highest stage of relationship with the Lord can be attained simply by hearing about Him, His name, form, quality, etc. from authentic sources like Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, recited by pure unalloyed devotees of the Lord. Bhaktivedanta purports ki jai. We'll just read the translation once, then we start the discussion. O my Lord, persons who smell the aroma of your lotus feet, carried by the air of Vedic sound through the holes of the ears, accept your devotional service. For them, you are never separated from the lotus of their hearts. ॐ अज्ञानतिमिरन्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। नमः ॐ विष्णुपदाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामी इति नामिने। नमस्ते सरस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैता गदाधर श्रीवास आदि गौर भक्त वृंद। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्णा। Next slide, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna. So, the current chapter, as it is entitled Prayers by Lord Brahma for the Creative Energy. So, we see in Srimad Bhagavatam, in 10th chapter of Canto 2 of Srimad Bhagavatam, Srila Shukadev Goswami, he delineates all the 10 different topics that are the principal topics covered in Srimad Bhagavatam, which start with Sarga, the process of primary creation by the Lord, universal creation by Mahavishnu, glancing over the material nature and many universes, basically activating the Mahatattva and many universes coming out of his body. And then in each universe, Mahavishnu expanding himself as Garbhodakshaya Vishnu. And from whose navel the lotus flower springs. And on the lotus flower, Lord Brahma is born. And again, we will see the description of this process of Sarga as well as Visarga, specifically the Visarga, which is the secondary creation by Lord Brahma, and the prayers offered by Lord Brahma to Lord Vishnu at various places in the scriptures, especially in Srimad Bhagavatam itself, in the second canto. In the earlier chapter, we will also see the process of manifestation of Lord Brahma and some of the prayers that are offered along with the details. But those details, we will see, they have been more profoundly expounded in this particular canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, which is canto number 3. Also, we see description of Lord Brahma's manifestation from Garbhodakshaya Vishnu, also in Brahma Samhita. So all the scriptures, we will find some differences in the description, some differences in terms of the details to which these descriptions are mentioned. So with our very tiny capacity to understand and what we have heard from the previous acharyas, we can understand that this is due to in different, kalpa is what, one day of Brahma Mataji, yeah. So in different lifetimes, we see that Lord Brahma, different living entities take birth as Lord Brahma, and even in Krishna book we see that there are 10-headed Lord Brahmas, there are 100-headed, and there are some Lord Brahmas in the bigger universes. Ours is a very small universe which have millions and millions of heads. So this particular details that we see in Srimad Bhagavata mentioned are in the current Brahma's life. So we will see some differences between the details of the manifestation of Brahma and creation by Brahma, specifically the secondary creation, Visarga. This is due to different Brahmas having different degrees of characteristics bestowed by the Lord based on the particular universe they are taking care, or particular universe they are responsible for creation. And similarly, in the subsequent cantos of Srimad Bhagavatam, all these other topics, principal topics of Srimad Bhagavatam, including Sthanam, Poshanam, Uti, Manvantara, Ishanu Katha, Nirodha, Mukti, and Ashraya, these are covered. Next slide, Prabhuji. Yeah. So we see Lord Brahma in the previous chapter, which is chapter number 8 of Canto 3 of Srimad Bhagavatam, we see that he is born out of the navel from the lotus flower that is sprouting from the navel of Lord Garbhodakshaya Vishnu. He is born, and after he is manifested, it is mentioned that he could not perfectly understand the creation or the lotus from which he has come about, or he could not understand himself why he has come into being and what is the purpose of his life. And then we see that Lord Brahma contemplated through contemplated the origin of lotus based on his power of reasoning, and it is mentioned that he went up and down the stem of the lotus flower to explore the lotus flower, in probably trying to make sense where he is, what he is meant to do, and who he is. And after utilizing his power of reasoning to a sufficient degree, it is mentioned that Lord Brahma, he sat in meditation, concentrating his mind on the Supreme Lord, meditating on the Lord for his 100 years. That means, based on Lord Brahma's calculation, he meditated for 100 years, and we know each and every moment of Lord Brahma is very, very long compared to the earthly calculations. So, based on his own time scale, Lord Brahma, he meditated on the Lord for 100 years, and he developed through this meditation requisite knowledge for performing his service. In fact, as we proceed in this chapter, chapter number 9, there comes a very beautiful verse where Lord Brahma acknowledges his own limitations and acknowledges the capacity of our, capacity for our service that is provided also by the Lord. So there is nothing to be proud. Like Lord Brahma teaches through his own example as an acharya, how each and every service that we are able to render to the Lord, only our, some kind of positive we have to consider. It is our sincere desire to render that service. But all the capacity, all the ingredients, all the facilities for that service are ultimately provided by the Supreme Lord. So once Lord Brahma developed this required knowledge, as a result, he could see within his heart the Supreme within himself, who he could not see before with the greatest of the endeavors. So Lord Brahmaji, who is the first Acharya in our line of disciplic succession, Brahma Madhva Gaudiya Sampradaya, he is teaching through his own examples so many different important characteristics, important qualities which all of us need to focus on in our own devotional life. One being the persistent, being persistent, that although he did not understand through his own power of reasoning, and imagine he is the preceptor acharya, so what is his thought process, what is his capacity to think, what is his capacity to understand, even with his whole knowledge and even with all understanding and capacity to think, he could not understand what he is supposed to do and how he is supposed to do. And after he has meditated on the Lord, by the grace of the Lord, he got the ability, he got the knowledge through which he could realize his own position, realize why he has come about from the lotus flower emanating from the navel of Lord Garbhodakshaya Vishnu. Next slide, Prabhuji. And it is explained, then comes the description of the beautiful form of Lord Garbhodakshaya Vishnu in text 3.8.24. It's a beautiful translation, so I'll just read the translation of this verse. The luster of the transcendental body of the Lord mocked the beauty of Coral Mountain. The Mountain is very beautifully dressed by the evening sky, but the yellow dress of the Lord mocked its beauty. There is gold on the summit of the mountain, but the Lord's helmet, bedecked with jewels, mocked it. The mountains, waterfalls, herbs, etc., with a panorama of flowers, seems like garlands, but the Lord's gigantic body and his hands and legs, decorated with jewels, pearls, tulsi leaves, and flower garlands, mock the scene of the mountain. So here the beautiful description Brahmaji is giving of the darshan of Garbhodakshaya Vishnu that he got after the successful conclusion of his 100 years of tapasya, of his 100 years of meditation on the Lord. And then after glorifying the form of the Lord, Lord Brahma begins to offer his prayers. It is mentioned that he is filled with the power of the mode of passion, and he has got the impetus to create, and to be able to create, to be able to fulfill the services assigned to him, he starts offering his prayers. He begins offering his prayers for the creative energy. Lord Brahma, thus being surcharged with the mode of passion, became inclined to create. And after seeing the five causes of creation, which are nothing but the primal elements of material creation, indicated by the personality of Godhead, Lord Brahma began to offer his respectful prayers on the path of creative mentality. So, with this previous chapter, chapter number 8 concludes, and this particular chapter begins with the prayers by Lord Brahma for the creative energy. Next slide, Prabhuji. Yes. So, in this particular chapter, chapter number 9, in the text 1, Lord Brahma expresses his gratitude to the Lord for having given him the vision to understand and to know the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Garbhodakshaya Vishnu, his own position. And Lord Brahma is not just happy for he having this opportunity, he having this fortune of knowing about the Lord, knowing about himself, and knowing the purpose, the mission of his life, Lord Brahma is also expressing his concern, he's expressing his feelings about the unfortunate embodied living entities who by not accepting the personal form of the Lord, or who by neglecting, not accepting is probably not the right word, but neglecting the personal form, the worship of the personal form of the Lord, they remain aloof. They derived themselves from this opportunity of knowing the personality of Godhead. They don't take advantage of understanding the form of the Lord. And then Lord Brahma in verse number 2, he acknowledges the capacity that is provided by the Lord for our respective services, and is ultimately acknowledging that this capacity is not coming from our own selves, but ultimately it is the Supreme Lord who is enabling, who is empowering us to perform our services. And then in text number 3, Lord Brahma, he understands how this material form, that is his own body, it is ultimately coming from the Lord's body, which is Satchit Ananda Vigraha, which is completely spiritual form of bliss, knowledge, and eternity. And then in text number 4, Lord Brahma again glorifies the transcendental form of Lord Garbhodakshaya Vishnu. And then we come to today's verse, where Lord Brahma reveals the process of capturing the Lord's lotus feet within our heart through the beautiful analogy of just like the lotus flower, the fragrance of the lotus flower is carried by the wind to our nostrils. Lord Brahma is explaining with this analogy how the glories of the lotus feet of the Lord are transformed, are carried by the fragrance. That fragrance is carried by the wind of the Vedic scriptures, which enters one's heart. And if one gives the proper oral reception to these messages coming through the Vedic scriptures, then we will be able to capture the lotus feet of the Lord within our hearts. Next verse, Prabhu. Next slide, Prabhuji. So we'll just read the translation once and then we come here. O my Lord, persons who smell the aroma of your lotus feet, carried by the air of Vedic sound through the holes of the ears, accept your devotional service. For them, you are never separated from the lotus of their hearts. So, Lord Brahmaji is also concluding this verse by giving the results. What happens to such devotees of the Lord who capture the transcendental glories of name, form, qualities, and pastimes of the Lord within their heart through the process of hearing from the Vedic scriptures, from the authorities. So here, this verse has been given in a very, very poetic manner by Srila Shukadev Goswami and Srila Suta Goswami. Here it is, the Lord's lotus feet are compared to Charana Ambuja. The feet of the Lord are compared to the lotus, Charana Ambuja. And the fragrance of the lotus flower, just like it is carried to our nostrils through the medium of wind, similarly, the fragrance of the lotus feet of the Lord, it's mentioned that it is carried to the devotee's ears through the wind of the scriptural vibrations. Jigranti Karna Vivarai. Devotees smell that fragrance of the Lord through their ears, so which we have mentioned as the title for our discussion today, how to smell through one's ears and not through one's nostrils. Shrutivata Nitam, wind that carries the fragrance to the ears of the devotees are the Shrutis or the Vedic scriptures. And one who takes the shelter of the scriptures are actually appreciating, worshipping, and smelling the fragrance of the lotus feet of Krishna. So only those devotees, according to Shukadev Goswami, are able to appreciate, properly worship, and acknowledge, understand the presence of the Lord, who hear about the Lord from the Vedic scriptures. And those people who ignore such Vedic scriptures, although they are actually seeing Pashyanapi na pashyati, although they are actually seeing the physical form of the Lord in front of them, example Duryodhan, they don't necessarily necessarily acknowledge, they don't necessarily appreciate the position of the Lord, and they are not able to take benefit of that personal appearance of the Lord in front of them if they have not properly heard and assimilated the knowledge from the scriptures. Next slide. Importance of aligning oneself with the authorized Vedic scriptures. It is explained in the scriptures like Bhakti Rasamrut, Sindhu, and all other writings by the Goswamis, that unless we get knowledge from the Vedic scriptures coming in the line of disciplic succession, there is every opportunity for us to get totally reach a different conclusion. And that's why here the Vedic scriptures, the essence is specifically mentioned as Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. Specifically talking about the glories of Srimad Bhagavatam in Padma Puran, there is a beautiful analogy that comes where Srimad Bhagavatam is compared to the ghee, to the clarified butter, which is spread all across the milk in its form as the milk, but which we are not able to take that same benefit, same essence by drinking milk as we are able to take by consuming just a little bit of its essence, which is the ghee or the clarified butter. So it is explained that the Vedanta Sutras, they are like the cream of the Vedic literatures. They are the essence of the Vedic literatures. And Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the commentary on the Vedanta Sutras by Srila Vyasadeva, it is like the clarified butter. It is even the essence of that essence of Vedanta Sutras. So therefore it is explained that when such essence of the scriptures in the form of Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, is received by one in the parampara system, only then, only after aligning ourselves to the scriptures as well as the commentaries of the previous acharyas, can we properly appreciate the lotus feet of the Lord, or can we appreciate the process of devotional service. So here this verse comes in Bhakti Rasamrut Sindhu, if I am not wrong, where it is mentioned, Shruti Smruti Puranadi Pancharatra Vidhim Vina Ekantake Harer Bhakti Utpata Eva Kalpate. That means such devotional service, the principles that are concocted by one without referring the instructions given in the authorized Vedic literatures like Upanishads, Puran, and Puranas and the Narada Pancharatra, they simply cause unnecessary disturbance in the society. And that's why we saw not only now, but in the previous ages, this particular principle had been magnified so much by the Lord Himself when He appeared as Lord Buddha, that people of that age, the highest order of the society, they were concocting the conclusions of the scriptures to suit their own needs by wanting to gratify their senses by unnecessary killing of the animals, saying and propagating that that was necessary as per the injunctions of the scriptures. So we see that whenever such alignment in terms of the proper authorized Vedic literatures coming through the disciplic succession is not there, then even the topmost intelligent class of the society, they can also be deviated so much that Lord personally needs to appear in this world. So that's why the scriptures as well as the acharyas, they warn us against concocting the Vedic conclusions based on our own intelligence without referring to the commentary of the acharyas. And there is a beautiful pastime which Hare Krishna, which also comes in the lifetime of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. What was the name of the devotee who had written commentary on Srimad Bhagavatam, but who had not referred to the commentary of Srimad Bhagavatam by Sridhar Swami? Sorry? Devananda Pandit. I don't think anybody remembers. I don't recollect those apologies. But when this devotee came to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to present his commentary, and when Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu understood that this devotee has not referred to the previous authorized commentary on Srimad Bhagavatam, like that of Sridhar Swami, whose commentary was one of the first prominent commentaries that was even acknowledged by Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself, he referred that one who does not follow a Swami is a prostitute. So our intelligence also becomes unchaste when we does not when we do not follow the commentaries of the previous acharyas. And just one point on this particular thing, which is also stressed by many devotees, that for us, specifically the followers of Srila Prabhupada, what it means is first and foremost following and understanding in detail the commentary by Srila Prabhupada. As Srila Prabhupada himself has mentioned many, on many occasions, that all the conclusions of the previous acharyas that are already included in his purports of Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita and other of his books. In fact, Srila Prabhupada mentioned his purports as his spiritual ecstasies. So, trying to follow different books without properly realizing and understanding the commentary of Bhaktivedanta purport, the commentary by Srila Prabhupada, it is also, we can understand, one way of not aligning ourselves properly with the Vedic conclusions, following the footsteps of our Acharya. So it's very, very important we understand the purports given by the founder Acharya of ours before we move on to the different books. In fact, even within our society, International Society for Krishna Consciousness, there are many leading devotees who I personally derive a lot of inspiration, and without naming, but there are various leading devotee preachers who insist on the devotees they are preaching to minimum read Srila Prabhupada's books like Bhagavad Gita 3 times, Srimad Bhagavatam at least 1 time, and Paramananda Prabhu can probably clarify, like His Grace Krishna Smaran Prabhu. He insists on the students to read Bhagavad Gita at least 3 times, Srimad Bhagavatam 1 time, and Chaitanya Charitamrita 1 time, properly, study it properly before they move to any other books, further to Srila Prabhupada's commentary. So definitely one can refer to these books, but Srila Prabhupada's commentary is our primary source of aligning ourselves with the Vedic conclusions. Because Srila Prabhupada himself has shown confidence in his purport, saying that my purports are these books are going to be the law books for the next 10,000 years. So he knows what is good for our particular time, place, and circumstances for us to grasp the conclusions of the scriptures. And it is explained by Srila Prabhupada in his own books how these spiritual realities are conveyed through the Vedic sounds, through the sound medium, the via medium of both the, the, the Vani as well as the books, the written form of the Vani. So devotees, they observe the value of anything and everything in the world only by understanding the relevance or the extent that particular thing can be used in the service of the Lord. And sometimes what happens that if we don't read or refer to the commentaries by the previous acharya, then that particular point can be misunderstood. Like, the story of Amrish Maharaj, it is explained by Srila Prabhupada in the story of Amrish Maharaj how he possessed opulence that was comparable or even greater than the residents of the heavenly planets. But he himself, how did he perceive that opulence? Srila Prabhupada explains that he did not perceive his opulence in anything better than what he can engage in the service of the Lord. Similarly, we also see the story of Srila Sanatan Goswami and the touchstone. That one time, one man, it is mentioned that he came to Srila Sanatan Goswami asking for the most valuable thing which he possessed. And Srila Sanatan Goswami guided that person to the dustbin, and the person was in the initial stage, very amazed to see the touchstone and thought that, if it is so valuable, why did Sanatan Goswami put it in the dustbin? And then he went to Sanatan Goswami to inquire that why have you put this touchstone which is so valuable in the dustbin? To which Srila Sanatan Goswami responded that because I have something more valuable than this, compared to which this touchstone is just as good as a piece of normal stone. And this person inquired about what is that valuable thing. And Srila Sanatan Goswami promised to share that valuable thing provided the person gives away the so-called touchstone. And then Srila Sanatan Goswami explained about the glories of the name, form, qualities, pastimes, specifically the chanting of the holy names of the Lord. So we see only when we understand the Sambandha Jnana, only when we understand the relationship both of the Jiva as well as any particular thing which is present in the creation of the Lord, only then we can understand its value in the truest sense. And that's why if we see the purports of Srila Prabhupada, the lectures of Srila Prabhupada, we will see Although his books contain the reality, the truth of the highest order, when Srila Prabhupada is speaking, almost 80, 90, 95% of his classes, they mainly deal with the Sambandha Jnana. Even when he's talking about Srimad Bhagavatam, even when he's speaking Srimad Bhagavatam, Srila Prabhupada will time and again start with the basics, explaining the relationship of the soul as the part and parcel of the Lord. Why? Because if we know this particular part thoroughly, if we understand the relationship both of the jiva as well as the so-called material things around us in relationship with Krishna and how we can engage them in the service of the Lord, only then we are able to understand their value in the truest sense. And without that, we will misunderstand both the particular things around us as well as our own self if we do not refer to the Sambandha Jnana, how we are related with the Lord. And that's why it is mentioned the spiritual reality is conveyed through the Vedic sound. So for this, I have just shortlisted few examples of the devotees, the great personalities who were on the highest platform of their devotional service. And again, in spiritual life, the highest can be many. It is not like material, where the topmost can only be one. But in spiritual life, the highest can be more than even the other highest platform. Like we see in the case of Srila Shukadev Goswami, who was next, yes, Prabhuji, who it is mentioned that he was deriving the topmost pleasure of transcendental happiness by engaging in the deriving pleasure from the Brahman platform of the Lord. And such Shukadev Goswami, after he was born as a self-realized soul to Srila Vyasadeva and his wife, he immediately started walking in the forest as a 16-year-old without bothering to keep any connect with his father and mother. And Srila Vyasadeva, he tried unsuccessfully to follow his son and trying to bring him back. And then it is explained that Srila Vyasadeva, realizing the platform of Srila Shukadev Goswami, he sent two of his students with not many, but just two verses from Srimad Bhagavatam. And here I have quoted one verse of Srimad Bhagavatam, which is a beautiful verse. So these two students of Srila Vyasadeva, they used to go in the forest, and while collecting the wood and while performing other services for their spiritual master, they used to loudly recite and chant these verses from Srimad Bhagavatam along with the meaning. And this, the description of Lord Krishna, the beautiful form of Lord Krishna, and the glorification of the qualities of the Lord through this particular verse that we are going to recite now. Srila Shukadev Goswami, who was apparently placed on the topmost platform of Brahman realization and deriving great transcendental pleasure from that understanding, from that realization, got attracted to the personal features of the Lord, and he became the topmost propagator, preacher of Srimad Bhagavatam, the science of Godhead. So this particular verse is it comes in Srimad Bhagavatam. Aho bakiyam stanakalakutam जिगांसया यद् अपि असाध्वी लेभे गतिं धात्री उचितं ततोऽन्यं कं वा दयालुं शरणं व्रजेम. Translation: Alas, how shall I take shelter of one more merciful than he who granted the position of mother to a she demon, Putana, although she was unfaithful, and she prepared deadly poison to be sucked from her breast. So when Srila Shukadev Goswami heard this glorification of the Lord from the mouth of these students, the servants of Srila Vyasadeva, his heart transformed and he gave up the so-called transcendental pleasure which he was deriving from the understanding, from the appreciation of the Brahman platform of the Lord, and he became attracted to the personal feature. And like that, there are many, many examples. One more example about hearing about the form, hearing about the Lord and appreciating the Lord through the process of hearing, we see in the life of our own founder Acharya, Srila Prabhupada himself, where in Lilamrit we read that in the Vrindavan Yatra that was conducted by his spiritual master, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, Srila Prabhupada, as a householder, as a business man, he could not attend the whole yatra. So only for the last part of the yatra he could attend to take association of his Guru Maharaj. And that day, which happened to be the last day of the yatra, the devotees were supposed to, they had two options to visit the temple of Sheshashai Vishnu in Brajamandal Parikrama, and or hearing from Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati, who was going to speak. And only few devotees stayed back, and amongst them was Abhay at that point in time, Srila Prabhupada for us. So, Srila Prabhupada, he heard Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur so attentively, and this quality was noted. This quality was noted by Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur. And when Abhay's name came for initiation later, when it was recommended, if I am not wrong, by the Gaudiya Math devotees in Allahabad, Prayag, for initiation, then Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur noted and recollected this quality of Srila Prabhupada, that yes, I know Abhay, he is very eager. What was the exact statement? He likes to hear, and that I have noted. That was the observation of Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur. And because of this particular quality by Srila Prabhupada, it is explained that he went on to achieve such success because of his immense faith in the words of his spiritual master. In fact, recently I also came across a wonderful class by His Grace Amogha Leela Prabhu, where he quotes one incident from the life of Srila Prabhupada, where he asked the devotees, which is the most important verse from the scriptures? And devotees had several guesses, where some devotees quoted Sarvadharman Parityaja, and Srila Prabhupada said no. Few devotees quoted Man mana bhava mad bhakta madhya jimam namaskuru, that verse from Srimad Bhagavad Gita, and Srila Prabhupada said no. And then Srila Prabhupada quoted the particular verse from what is the scriptures? Yasya deve para bhakti. Sorry? Shweta Upanishad. Srila Prabhupada quoted this particular verse, that a devotee who has got implicit faith in the words of the spiritual master and the scriptures, he will be properly for him the conclusions of the scriptures will be properly revealed through. So we see from the life of our own acharyas, and here Lord Brahma is teaching from his own example how one should have the implicit faith in this process of hearing, and especially for our own practical application, hearing through the parampara system and not deviating, keeping our own hearing process very, very chaste. That means we are not blocking ourselves from beyond the purports of Srila Prabhupada, but our first purpose, our first priority should be to properly assimilate the conclusions as presented by Srila Prabhupada. And one last example I would like to give before discussing coming to the conclusion of today's discussion. This example is quoted by Srila Giriraj Swami Maharaj in one of his offerings to next slide, Prabhuji. One of his offerings on Srila Prabhupada's Vyasa Puja ceremony, where he quotes the example of one devotee who used to come in the initial days of our movement in the Boston temple. His name was Peter, and because of his being constantly on the intoxication, and because of the influence of the intoxication, this devotee Peter, he used to sit like with his legs stretched at the entrance of the Boston temple, and sometimes he used to read Srila Prabhupada books, sometimes he used to hear in the classes, but at other times when the influence of the drugs would totally overcome him, he would just lie down and sleep, go to sleep, just sitting, stretching his legs in the temple hall. And it is mentioned by Giriraj Maharaj that as soon as any visitor would visit the temple, they would see Peter, lying across the entrance, and devotees were getting bit uncomfortable. Devotees were getting bit restless, that it is not a very good gesture to the guest when they see that a person is lying in this intoxicated state and apparently unconscious. And devotees led by His Holiness Satsvarup Das Goswami Maharaj, who they wrote to Srila Prabhupada asking Prabhupada's advice, what should we do with this devotee? That we don't think it is a very proper for the guest to see him in this particular posture. And Srila Prabhupada responded by few lines of his statements. He said, what's the matter? Can't you just tolerate him? And those words were like, very striking words for the devotees. And devotees understood that Srila Prabhupada has noticed this particular devotee and wants us to continue with him. And then slowly, this Peter, who was known amongst the devotee circles as Crazy Peter, he became little bit more sober and his habits changed and he took up to the lifestyle of the devotees gradually. And then Giriraj Swami Maharaj recollects that he moved to the New York temple. And then he didn't see, when Maharaj didn't see Peter in the devotee community in Boston, he inquired from devotees, where is our crazy Peter? And he came to know that Peter has now moved to New York temple. And then at one point in time, when Giriraj Swami Maharaj went to New York, he couldn't find Peter Prabhu there also. Then he came to understand that he has now moved to New Vrindavan devotee community and is about to get initiated by Srila Prabhupada. And Giriraj Swami Maharaj was amazed, by recollecting the series of events, how this particular devotee was apparently perceived as a disturbance by the community of devotees in the Boston, by their own understanding. But how 2 points he recollects. He recollects how Srila Prabhupada saw the potential even in the most hopeless of the conditions. And second thing, he recollects how this Peter, even in his crazy state, he used to read Srila Prabhupada books whenever he was conscious externally. And he used to hear from the devotees the discussions of Srimad Bhagavatam. Based on these two qualifications of this crazy Peter, Giriraj Swami Maharaj was amazed that now he is due for initiation. And after around 20 years, then he gets a flashback that he saw one devotee in the Mangalarti, attending Mangalarti in the new Vrindavan devotee community early in the morning, and he thought the face to be bit familiar. And then when he inquired from the devotees, who is this particular devotee? Devotees told him that he is Krishna Krita Prabhu, and then Giriraj Swami Maharaj was amazed that he's the same Krishna Krita Prabhu who translated many scriptures from Sanskrit into English and Bengali, including the writings of the Goswamis. And that was the time when almost 20-25 years had passed for the original episode of Crazy Peter blocking the path of the devotees coming into the temple hall. So this Giriraj Swami Maharaj recollects how, what is the potency of the glorification of this Vedic sound when it is coming from the parampara system, especially through the acharyas like Srila Prabhupada. It is so potent that sometimes we tend to misunderstand the potency, how much impact, how much effect it can have in apparently a hopeless person like this particular devotee. Peter Prabhu. Now, and then he went on to become Krishna Krita Prabhu. And then I wrote, I believe he passed away some time back, that his glories in terms of the type of contribution he has made to the Vaishnava Sampradaya by his writing and translation of the Goswami literatures. So in conclusion, Lord Brahma mentions in this verse, what is the result of such hearing, such glorification, hearing such glorification of the Lord through the Vedic sound coming through the disciplic succession? It is explained that the sound vibrations of the glorification of the Lord, it enters the devotee's ears through the Vedic sound, and this sound vibration of the Vedic scriptures, through this sound vibration, the lotus feet of the Lord enter the hearts of the sincere hearers who hear Krishna Katha. And what happens after such devotees? Here they receive the lotus feet of the Lord in their heart. They capture the lotus feet of the Lord, and it is explained by Srila Prabhupada in the purports of the today's verse that Lord does not want to give up the hearts of such devotees. And there is a beautiful, beautiful verse which comes in the episode again of Amrish Maharaj, where Lord Vishnu, he answers to Durvasa Muni, who has come to him for shelter, that the thoughts of my pure devotees, they are constantly filled in my heart, and my devotees know no one but myself and I know no one but them in my heart. And my devotees don't give up the thought of myself even for a moment. I cannot personally give up the thought of my pure devotees who are residing in my heart. So we see that there is such a reciprocation. Srila Prabhupada uses the word, the reciprocation between the pure devotees on the Lord, which one develops through this process of hearing about the Supreme Lord. So we quickly do a recap in 1 minute and then we conclude our discussion. We saw in slide 1 the 10 principal topics of Srimad Bhagavatam, of which the first two, the process of primary and secondary creation, first by the Lord and then by Lord Brahma, the secondary creation. How Lord Brahma, when he came about from the navel of Garbhodakshaya Vishnu through the lotus flower, he didn't understand why he has come about. And we also discuss how Lord Brahma tried his level best through his own power of reasoning to understand why he has come about. But after exhausting his reasoning, power of reasoning to the full capacity, he started meditating on the Lord by hearing the word tapa. And then after 100 years by his time scale, he understood, he got the darshan of the Lord. Then he glorifies the beautiful form of Garbhodakshaya Vishnu, and then he glorifies, he offers his different prayers for the process of his own service that is allocated to him, which is the creative impetus, the process of creation, secondary creation. He offers the beautiful prayers and he acknowledges the empowerment offered by the Lord for all of us, by which only we can render the devotional service. And then Lord Brahma also expresses his concern for the embodied souls of this world, that how they get left behind by not acknowledging, by not worshipping the personal form of the Lord, and by losing the opportunity to take up to the process of devotional service to the personal form. And he explains how the material form, which is Lord Brahma's own body, because he is also destined to death. Although there is no old age, there is no disease, but even the devatas are destined to die. So Lord Brahma connects how the material form, his own body, is coming about from the spiritual form of Lord Garbhodakshaya Vishnu. And then Lord Brahma glorifies the transcendental form of the Lord. And in today's verse, he reveals the process of capturing the form, the lotus feet of the Lord within one's heart through the process of Vedic sound vibration, with the beautiful analogy of the fragrance of a lotus flower entering our nostrils through the via medium of the wind. Similarly, the fragrance of the glorification of the lotus feet of the Lord can enter the hearts of the devotees through not the nostrils but through the process of hearing, through the ears. And with this, we conclude our discussion today. Please forgive me for going slightly overboard because we started a bit late. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Is there any question, any comment based on what we discussed? Pushpa Goval Prabhuji, you want to add anything? Discussion. Krishna Rati Mata. Hare Krishna. So thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Shri Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Mai ki jai. Nitai Gaur Premanande. Hari Hari Bol. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.